At a party, I overheard my husband's friend say she's got him wrapped around her finger. My husband smirked, yeah, and she'll never see it coming. That night, I quietly transferred all my assets. The next morning, he woke up to an empty house and a lawsuit. I'm a 46-year-old woman from Austin, Texas. My husband, Jake, and I have been married for 22 years. We built a life together, raised 2 kids, started a business, and shared countless memories. But one night changed everything. It was a warm Saturday evening in late April. Jake and I attended a housewarming party for his colleague, Mark. The event was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the hum of conversations. As the night progressed, I found myself in the kitchen, refilling my wine glass. That's when I overheard a conversation that would shatter my world. "She's got him wrapped around her finger," Mark chuckled. Jake responded with a smirk, "Yeah, and she'll never see it coming." My heart sank. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I quietly left the kitchen, my mind racing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying their words over and over. What did Jake mean? What was he planning? By morning, I had a plan. I decided to protect myself and my children. I contacted a trusted attorney, Sarah, who specialized in family law. I explained the situation, and she advised me to gather all financial documents and evidence of any suspicious activities. Over the next few days, I opened a separate bank account in my name, transferred my share of our joint savings into the new account, changed passwords to all my personal accounts, secured important documents like birth certificates, property deeds, and insurance policies, found a safe place for my children and me to stay temporarily. A week later, I sat Jake down and confronted him. I asked about the conversation I overheard. He looked surprised but quickly recovered. "You must have misheard," he said dismissively. I told him I was filing for divorce. He laughed, thinking I was bluffing. "You won't get anything," he sneered. I handed him the legal documents. His face turned pale. Jake tried to fight the divorce, but with the evidence and Sarah's expertise, the court ruled in my favor. I retained custody of our children, the house, and a significant portion of our assets. Jake's reputation suffered. Friends and family distanced themselves. He eventually moved out of state, trying to start anew. It's been 2 years since that night. My children and I have found peace. I started a new job, and we're rebuilding our lives. I share this story to remind others: trust your instincts, protect yourself, and never underestimate your strength. Jake didn't go quietly. At first, he acted like everything was fine. He'd leave for work, come home at the usual time, pretend to be the caring husband and father. But I could see the cracks forming. He was checking his phone more, whispering during calls, leaving the room when I entered. My lawyer had warned me, men like Jake don't take losing well. I should have expected what came next. 3 days after I served him the papers, I got a notice in the mail. Jake had filed a countersuit claiming I had stolen money from our joint business account. He said I was hiding assets and manipulating our kids to turn against him. He hired a cutthroat lawyer, the type who smiles through lies and plays dirty without blinking. The worst part? Jake had prepared for this. He'd been shifting funds months before I even knew something was wrong. I didn't tell my kids everything, just that Dad and I were figuring things out, and sometimes adults made bad choices. But they were old enough to feel the tension. My daughter, Mia, started having trouble sleeping. My son, Dylan, who's usually quiet, punched a kid at school who made a joke about divorced babies. It broke me, but I kept moving. Sarah and I started digging. We found out Jake had a separate bank account under his cousin's name. He was funneling money from our business into it slowly, hiding withdrawals in project invoices and contractor payments. Over $70,000. I was stunned. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. This was criminal. We subpoenaed records, brought in a forensic accountant. Jake's lawyer fought hard to keep it out of court, but the judge allowed it. That was when things turned uglier. Jake started calling my friends, telling them I was unstable, that I was having an affair, that I planned all this as some long con to ruin him. Some believed him, or at least pretended to. People I'd known for years suddenly stopped calling, stopped replying to texts. At church, I got sympathetic looks mixed with whispers. The school started calling me more often, subtly hinting that family turmoil might be affecting my kids' behavior. And then came the worst blow. Jake filed for full custody. He claimed I was emotionally manipulative, that I alienated him from the kids, that I was controlling and vindictive. He brought up my therapy sessions from 5 years ago when I was dealing with postpartum depression. Said I had mental health issues. I felt like I was drowning in lies. Every piece of me was being twisted into a weapon against me. But I had facts. I had truth. And I had patience. We gathered texts, emails, bank statements. I had a recording from the night of that party. My phone had been recording voice memos in my purse. It caught the entire kitchen conversation between Jake and Mark. When Sarah heard it, she stared at me for a long time before saying, "This could change everything." We submitted it as evidence. Jake was furious. He showed up at my temporary apartment uninvited one night, drunk and yelling. I didn't open the door, just called the police and watched from the peephole as they put him in cuffs. That was the last straw for the judge. Temporary restraining order. Supervised visitation. That should have been enough to stop him, right? Wrong. Jake's not the kind of man to accept defeat. He started working on something else. Quiet. Careful. I wouldn't find out until weeks later what he was doing behind the scenes. And when I did, it hit me harder than anything else he'd done. A month passed. Things seemed like they were finally stabilizing. Jake was still fighting in court, but the recordings, the financial proof, and his drunken outburst had damaged him badly in the eyes of the judge. I was spending more time with the kids, getting them into a better routine. They were still shaken, but healing. I let my guard down. That's when it hit me. I got a call from the bank about a flagged transaction on my business account. One of the accounts I thought I had secured. Someone had tried to authorize a $15,000 wire transfer to a real estate company in Arizona. It wasn't me. I froze. I immediately called Sarah. She contacted the bank and demanded a hold on the account. After a few tense hours and back-and-forth calls, we found out someone had used my login credentials, passwords that had already been changed. Jake didn't just guess them. He'd gotten them somehow. And there was only one possibility that made sense. Someone close to me gave them to him. That's when I remembered Emily. Not her real name, but someone I thought was a friend. We'd met at PDA meetings, and she'd always supported me through the early divorce mess. I confided in her. I let her borrow my laptop once when hers crashed during a committee meeting. I never thought twice about it. But now I did. Sarah pulled phone records. Turns out Emily had called Jake's number multiple times in the last few weeks, on days when she and I had lunch, or when I shared key details about the lawsuit or finances. She was feeding him info. We confronted her. She denied it at first, then cracked when presented with evidence. Turns out Jake had been paying her to spy. Not much, just enough to help her with bills and make her feel important. That betrayal cut deep. I cut ties immediately and reported her actions to the court. But the damage was already done. Jake had used the info to plant a story with a local real estate blog. According to them, I had bought a property in Arizona under a shell company while hiding marital assets. A clear attempt to flip the script. Sarah and I managed to squash the article with legal threats, but it got picked up by another gossip blog before it went down. And just like that, Jake's narrative was out there. Suddenly, I was the villain. Some of my coworkers pulled me aside. One even asked if I was really planning to leave Texas. My boss looked uneasy. Rumors like that are poison in business circles, especially when you own a boutique real estate agency like I do. Clients started canceling. A big deal I had been chasing for months dropped out with no explanation. I was losing everything I built not because I did anything wrong, but because Jake was poisoning the well. And he wasn't done. About 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Not from his lawyer. From the IRS. Jake had reported me. Said I'd underreported earnings from the business over the last 3 years. That I was using fake expenses to dodge taxes. He handed them selective spreadsheets and even a fake email I supposedly sent to a contractor offering cash under the table. I broke down in my lawyer's office. I had nothing to hide, but I knew this could drag on for months, maybe years. Sarah reassured me, told me we'd fight it, and we started gathering every document, every email, every bank statement to prove the truth. But I knew this was going to drain me emotionally and financially. Jake's plan wasn't just to win. It was to destroy me. And here's the worst part, I still didn't know what else he had planned. Because Jake wasn't acting alone anymore. There was someone else behind this. Helping him. Feeding him strategy. And we were about to find out exactly who. A week after the IRS letter, I found something that finally cracked the case wide open. Jake had been sloppy. In his rush to destroy me, he forgot that digital footprints don't lie. While backing up my old email accounts to turn over to Sarah, I found an archived conversation I didn't recognize. It was between Jake and someone named JL. The messages were vague, but one thing was clear, they were planning something together. Dates, names, strategies. I ran the name past Sarah. A week later, she called me with a voice that sounded like she was clenching her teeth. "You're not going to like this," she said. "Tell me. It's your brother." I stopped breathing. My younger brother, Tom, The one who helped us with our first down payment. The one I had always stood up for when our parents gave him a hard time. He had been in and out of work for years. Jake had bailed him out of a DUI once and given him a job in the business to keep him stable. Turns out, Tom had been feeding Jake internal business reports, private emails, and even client lists. In exchange, Jake paid off Tom's debts and promised him a 10% stake in the company after the divorce went through and I was out. I didn't even cry. I just sat in silence while my whole life rewrote itself in front of me. We set the stage for the confrontation. Sarah advised me to bring everything to mediation instead of court. Keep it controlled. Keep it legal. But I didn't want calm. I wanted the truth in the open. I wanted everyone to hear it. So we did both. I requested a formal mediation session with Jake and his lawyer, and I invited Tom under the pretense of family support. What Jake and Tom didn't know was that we had submitted a request to make it a recorded mediation due to financial misconduct concerns. They agreed. It started civil, like they always do. Jake sat back, cocky and smug, like he always did when he thought he was the smartest person in the room. Tom looked bored, chewing gum like a teenager. His lawyer looked tired. Then Sarah laid it all out. Emails. Account transfers. The shell company Jake used in Arizona. The messages between Jake and Tom. The IRS was already opening a fraud investigation. Jake's face dropped first. Tom turned pale next, leaned forward, and whispered to Jake, "You told me none of this would come back to me." Sarah looked up from her folder and said, "Well, it has." And then I finally spoke. "I trusted you both. You didn't just betray me, you used my children, my name, my entire life like it was some game." Jake tried to argue. Said I was paranoid, unstable. Tom tried to say it wasn't about money, it was about being tired of living in my shadow. He said I made everything about me, that I acted like I was better than everyone. I stood up. "You were my brother. You were my husband. I loved you both. And you both looked me in the eye and decided I was easier to destroy than to respect." Tom stormed out first. Slammed the door. Didn't even say my name. Jake tried to follow, but Sarah stopped him. "You leave now and we go straight to court. Everything public. You want the kids seeing that." He sat back down. The aftermath was cold. Jake's lawyer negotiated a full surrender of his business rights to avoid fraud charges. Tom tried to fight it, but he had no money left for legal fees. I got full custody, full ownership of the company and the house. Jake was left with supervised visitation and court-ordered therapy. But none of that healed the wound. My daughter asked one night, "Why did Uncle Tom hate you?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't make her cry, so I just said, "He made a mistake." My son didn't talk about Jake for weeks. When visitation started, he sat in the corner and refused to speak. That broke Jake more than any lawsuit ever could. As for me, I felt hollow for a long time. Not angry, not sad, just empty. Like a part of me had burned up and all that was left was smoke and skin. People gossiped, of course. Some said I was cold, that I planned this, that no woman just stumbles into that kind of leverage. But those who really knew me, they stayed. The biggest surprise was Mark, the one from the party. A few months later, he reached out and apologized. Said he had no idea Jake had gone that far. He offered to testify if needed. I declined, but I appreciated the gesture. Now, almost a year later, I'm rebuilding. The business is stronger than ever. My kids are doing better. I've started therapy not because I'm broken, but because I want to be better. Not just for them. For me. Jake moved to Colorado. Tom disappeared. I haven't heard from either of them. I don't forgive them. But I'm done letting them live rent-free in my head. I'm not the same woman who stood in that kitchen refilling her wine glass, thinking her life was perfect. I'm not naive anymore. But I'm also not afraid. I saw the worst in people I once loved. And I'm still standing. And that's enough for me.